Meeting. So good to see you guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy post-Turkey Day. Post-Turkey Day. So we've got a ton of announcements that I need to go over, and let me start off with a big congratulations to our very own Tom Blanchard, who was honored at the UNLV alumni game as a service veteran, and they did a really nice, tell us all about it. What happened?
I don't know, I was just standing there. I couldn't hear a thing.
Tell what
nothing happened. I don't know. They told me to come, and they gave me a ball, everybody cheered, and I left.
Who signed the ball?
The coach.
There you go.
What's his name?
I have no idea. But it's in my office if you want to see it.
It was very nice.
It was nice. You do this stuff not for the recognition, but just because it's the right thing to do, and it's nice to be recognized every now and then. I know I make it look really easy, so.
I'm shy.
Well, Tom, thank you for your service, for sure. And so it was very cool. I saw it in the newspaper, for those of you that still get that. So we have a couple of exciting dates coming up. We have December 7th, we have our orientation right here in the Southwest office at 11 o'clock for those that have not attended. This Saturday from 9 to 12, we have our paper and pancakes right here at the Southwest office, so come for that. And the paper part of it is that you bring stuff to shred.
Correct.
Right, so if you're getting rid of those files that you don't need any longer because no one has paper anymore, bring it all and shred it up. We have some CE classes. Lois is doing the December CE Blitz, so on December 1st, you have 3 hours of agency from 1 to 4 here at the Sunset office. On December 8th, Vonina is teaching her amazing open house class, which qualifies for 3 hours of general credits from 1 to 4 in our Green Valley office. And then on December 15th, you have 3 hours of law here at the Sunset office from 1 to 4 as well. Before I go on to anything else, who has some brand new listings or some buyer needs that they want to talk about? And let me just first start off by saying, I am the best realtor in Dyer, Nevada, because I sold the only listing that's up there. Now we'll see if it closes, right? I didn't buy it. Somebody did and they got a fantastic deal. I've been telling you all forever.
12 grand?
Yeah, I wish. So who has a new listing?
Oh, look at this.
Woo-hoo!
Have a new listing. It's off of Washington and, what's that cross street?
I don't know.
Rainbow. Between Rainbow and Torrey. It's a 2-bedroom condo, but the owner took really good care of it. It's got these really nice wood look floors, tile, and yeah, they just really did a lot of extras in there.
What's the price?
$230.
$230.
And the HOA is $232.
Right.
Lots of green areas over there.
I hope so for
Lots of big open, I know.
That's a lot.
Who else has one? Come on, I know you got listings, I see them all the time. Nobody? Seriously? Okay, how about a buyer need? Thank God Jackie came to the meeting.
Buyer for a condo.
I have a buyer looking for a property. You know how hard it is. She's got money to put down, so she can go a little bit over, but she can't go over, like 330 would be desired, somewhere under that.
Anywhere in town.
A nice area. Not the ghetto.
They're all nice.
Not the ghetto.
They're all nice here. We don't have to go.
Okay, perfect. So no one else? Last chance? Ellie, are you sure? Not one?
I'm passive.
Okay. All right, well, guys, thank you so much for that. I appreciate your participation. Really do. Next up, we have Miriam with, there she is, with Prosperity. Give her a hand.
Talk to all those people.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Miriam. I don't think I've met a lot of you. I started with Prosperity a couple months ago. So I'm here just to talk about briefly, like, working in partnership with you guys as far as borrowers. I actually have a few right now that just due to the lack of education with the borrowers knowing to get us stuff in time, we can't get appraisals ordered. We can't get the loans into, underwriting and everything. So just kind of giving a little bit of prep and working together and saying, hey guys, like, educate them a little bit maybe on your end to start with. And I mean, I did get into them, but I know I probably sound like the naggy mom. So as long as we can get help with that and we can get everything moving, I'd rather have loans sitting in approval status ahead of time than having to wait and, rush everybody at the end. We don't like that feeling, right? So we want everybody approved and ready to go as soon as we can. So just short and sweet.
Very good. Thank you. Give her a round. Okay, so can anyone tell me what today's topic is?
NAR update.
Oh, you're looking at the board, very good. So I thought it would be kind of interesting, and so did my entire illustrious panel here, that we share with you a little bit about why we all went to San Diego for a week. It's not the reasons you're thinking, okay? So first off, believe it or not, wow, you're all past presidents, well, soon to be. And the reason we went is because as you start your involvement in the Board of Realtors, most people don't understand the relationship between Las Vegas Realtors, Nevada Realtors, and the National Association of Realtors, right? The only thing I ever hear is they take a bunch of money from me, and that's it, right? And so I think today, the one thing I want to provide to you is kind of how the connection works. And so the three of them cannot work without the others, and it's the way the information flows up from the locals. And it flows up because individuals just like these from all over the country go to these national meetings and they participate in the governance meetings. And not only that, but they also have an entire side of this meeting just for people that don't want anything to do with governance, but they want to learn and be educated in real estate. And so you can actually participate any way that you want in the conventions. But today we're going to kind of talk about your perspectives. Why is it that you like going to these national meetings? And Tom, we're going to start with you, because I can't wait to hear why you like to go to these national meetings.
Sorry.
Thank you, Janet.
Sorry.
NAR on its own, right, is this big 1.5 million people gig, right? And without having the ability to have relationships with those that have risen to be their representatives or our representatives at that level, we'd be stuck with a huge communication gap, right? They would have no idea what we all need down here. So it's important for us to be up there and to be able to schmooze, network, be able to get them at a moment of, not weakness, but where they're open to listening to our worries, gripes. Because if you're way up there at the 30,000 foot level, you don't see all the BS that we all have to do, right? Because they've taken the time off of their business. Most of them do get paid so that they have time to be able to do all that stuff and give everything that they need to give to do it. But it's important for us to have those conversations and be able to say, this is the wrong thing to do, we're doing the wrong stuff, inflation nation kind of stuff, all that, stuff that we had to throw that in. But it's important, right? So that's why I go, so that I have those relationships and be able to have a voice for you all, to the group that does those sometimes stupid commercials. I mean, you've seen the commercial with the Joshua trees or whatever the heck those are, the cacti. Yeah, moving. I mean, there was a big uproar about that because it was discriminatory and all that kind of stuff. But, because they don't always know what works best. And they're just like us, but you need to have that conversation with them to be able to help know what they're thinking, what we're thinking, and it's just important. Yeah.
So to be clear, when you say they is the entire staff of NAR, which we have several hundred staff members throughout the nation. And the other they that you're talking about is the probably 20,000 members that travel to this conference. And we usually get 20 to 30,000 members that go to every single one of these. And these are local association presidents, these are directors, these are just regular members in the area they're in, they're national delegates. But that's the they, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the people that are in charge, right? The president, the president-elects, the vice presidents, all those people are going to be coming up the chain and represent us at the national level. It's important to have those relationships. We have that open communication, and I can call up the NAR president for 2023 and say, hey, dude, what the are you thinking?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this?
So he wouldn't answer that. So Tom, you were the past president of LVR, you're the incoming president-elect for NVR, a lot of acronyms, and you're a national director, and we'll talk about what that means for a minute. Janet, this year was your first year not being a national director after doing it for 6-7 years you've been a national director.
I know, I felt left out, lonely, like my phone wasn't ringing off the hook with dinner invitations. But I was there because I am on an NAR committee. I am on the Professional Standards Committee. We had a choice. We could have stayed home and like did a hybrid Zoom or in person. And the room where we actually had the meeting was freezing cold. But one of the reasons I go is not everything that Tom just said, but also because the information that you get. Now and you meet people that you go to a class that they're teaching and you go, oh, this person's on the NAR radar, and they're going to be at least a vice president, if not president, down the road. Now, at a convention was where I first met one of my favorite national speakers, Lee Brown, and she's on her road, moving on up. But this time I met a new lady, Barbara Betts from California, and I took a class from her on the code of ethics and risk reduction. And I've been on professional standards for 10 years at the board, and I learned stuff that I never even thought about, which I'll go over in a little bit, but that's another reason to go. You get to meet people who are up and coming, like you met Brandon when he was not even on the board. Now look at him.
So Janet, this is like your promised land, right? This is where you go and there's classes every day. There's people that you can connect with. I mean, this is the networking capital of real estate, right?
Exactly.
And so the relationships that you've built through it, though, you use those in your business just like you're going to show us in your notes. I mean, so that by itself was great. But talk about the circuit that agents can just go down if they're not involved in leadership.
Well, first of all, you have to really make choices because they usually give you a little booklet, but this year, I don't know if it was because of COVID or if they're cutting back or they weren't sure how many people were going to show up. The schedule was emailed to you and it was on your phone and you could plan out. The hard part is like, say, here's a class at 10 o'clock on Thursday morning that you're like, oh, I know that speaker, I really want to go to that class. Oh, but there's another class at 10 o'clock and this sounds like a really good topic that I need to know to work with some things in my office. And it's all about choices. You don't have to be on a board. You can go just flat out for the education, not to mention the networking. There are people sitting next to you. One would be from Kansas and one might be from Texas. Exchange cards, do referrals. It's fabulous networking opportunity.
She had an accent when she said Texas.
Oh,
Brandon, so you went as the incoming president-elect for LVR, and so, incoming president for LVR. What'd you think?
Well, first your question was, why do you like going to these and I don't? I hate going to them initially. I dread the whole going and getting there. But once you get there, it's 100% worth your while. You not only have the governance meetings, you have other classes, you have the networking, there's plenty of social events to meet people and network and all that stuff. But one of the things on being on the executive board of LVR, or the incoming president-elect, is there's a lot of meetings that happen outside of the convention because everybody's there. And I think that's very, very valuable, that we're able to have face-to-face conversation with different vendors, different people that we may be doing business with in the future. So that's probably the biggest.
So that point was same for me when I was going in as president. Most of the contracts that we negotiated started at those conventions where we sat down with the higher up leadership of these companies, because again, they all were there, and we were able to have a heart-to-heart about what it is we really want out of these, and then take them forward for debate and everything else. Let's bring Tyson up here for a minute. Tyson, come up here for just a second. Let's give him a round of applause.
Hey, just wanted you to know too, there's two conventions a year that NAR puts on. There's a mid-year that's in Washington, D.C., and I do look forward to that one. That's a little bit more political and a lot of stuff there. That's a great one. If you've never been to one, DC's awesome anyway, but to be able to sit down with your Congress people and stuff like that and actually voice our opinions, that's big. But in 2 years, I believe 2 years, it will be, the year end will be here in Las Vegas. That's good and bad, but it'll make it easy for travel if you've never been to one.
So I brought Tyson up because Tyson doesn't he look nice today? Doesn't he have a glitter on his eye?
He's got a glow about him.
Yes, so Tyson just came back from a very long vacation. Tyson is our YPN incoming chair, and so one of the honors of being in that position is that you get to travel to the convention so that you can start networking with YPNs all over the country. And so this was your very first NAR convention, right? You'd never been to any of this stuff before. We made you go. What did you think and what did you get out of it?
I didn't know what to expect when I first You know, they just said, okay, we're sending you off to San Diego, but it was very eye-opening when you go and you sit with, you know, other YPN members, other board type meetings, and you get to see the cool things they're doing. And you kind of get ideas of, okay, how do I bring this back to the association and make it better? And then when they were talking about the networking thing, like I remember I was walking down the street just to go grab lunch. I run into this guy walking his dog, start talking. It's like, oh, I'm a local agent here in San Diego. I'm like, oh, I'm in Las Vegas. And he's like, oh, that's funny. I just referred to another company out there that I'm with. They completely screwed the deal up.
Yes.
I need someone in Las Vegas to take over this listing. And so I would have never got that if I wasn't doing that. So the networking and then all the information from the board was amazing.
So based on our schedules, I mean, we have pretty set schedules on things we have to go to. Yours wasn't as set, and so you were able to kind of move around to some of the other stuff. What was your favorite thing you went to?
I actually went and sat through, this guy does like facial recognition training, and he implements it into sales. So they go through and they talk about like immigration officers and how they can actually read their facial expressions and see how, in just like a blink of an eye, you can, even if you lie or try to, you know, fake like you're happy, your face will give it away. So how to use that in sales. I had a little break in time where I went to that class, and that was probably the coolest thing I went to.
Wow, you're really getting your kung fu together there on that. Great. So I think the question to me on the same line is, why do I go to this? Because it's the foundation of every good idea. We just rolled out last year, 2 years ago, I think, on the state, the Realtor Party Chair Champion. That all came from a meeting that Keith Lynham and I went to at National. And I'll be honest with you, if it hadn't been for that meeting and that program, we probably would have been killed during the legislative session. I mean, they would have taxed the heck out of us. We would have seen horrible tenant issues come up, and it was because of putting a champion in place that we got through it, and that all comes from these meetings. And what's interesting is Tom and I and Janet have been on the board together for a very, very long time. We went to meetings 7-8 years ago where stuff has just now come to fruition from things that we went to. So I think that's a huge point.
Can you explain the champion thing a little bit more? I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah, so when we were sitting in this meeting, there was a group from Connecticut and I think it was Connecticut, and we were all talking about how horrible our legislative sessions were and how we were getting beat up on things. And the lady from Connecticut, she's like, I just don't understand that. And we're like, well, why? She goes, well, our governor's a realtor, our speaker is a realtor, our minority leader is a realtor, our majority leader is a realtor. Literally everyone in leadership in our legislature is a realtor. And so we don't really have realtor issues at the legislative session. I'm like, wait a minute, did you like just offer them free dues and they joined? Or she goes, no, we like started planning and we picked people, because what are realtors at heart? They're small business owners that are cornerstones of the community. I mean, you're selling neighborhoods. And so they picked out people throughout their leadership and got them to run, and they actually picked people in both parties, so it's not a party thing, so that they're running for offices because, you know, everyone benefits from a positive realtor agenda. And so they literally have stacked the house. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. So we're in the same process here in Nevada. I don't know if we'll get every position, but the whole point is that we have realtors and we're looking for more realtors that want to run politically, and that we put together an entire process for it. Okay, going back the other way, on a different line of questions, tell us what your committee involvement was, and what your role was, and what your biggest takeaway was from it. Yeah, go ahead.
So, like Chris said, I'm the incoming chair for YPN locally.
Say what that is, just so they know.
Young Professional Network. Your professional network now, not young. And so I went and sat with some of the national and a lot of the local representatives for YPN, and they did like we had a couple of conferences, and yeah, I sat through a lot of that.
I wasn't on a committee this year for national. I will be on one next year. But one big thing, almost like a committee type meeting, like sharing ideas and stuff, we did sit on a large board panel sort of thing, where it was a room and we just exchanged ideas from other like-sized boards across the country to share ideas, what's working, what's not working, that type of stuff.
Okay, before I get into my committee, professional standards, every year when I go to these things, on the, what's called the expo floor, which is every real estate vendor you've never heard of. NAR has a huge store, and you can buy all kinds of stuff. Realtor pins, realtor clothes, realtor bags. But every year, NAR puts out a little book, and it's a different color. They started with the little red book, and they got the little green book, the little blue book, the purple book. This is the little yellow book, and it's called Successful Habits to Live By for Realtors. I paid for these out of my own pocket, and I'm doing door prizes at the end. There's a red bucket right there. If you want one of these books, just drop your card in. Okay, so professional standards is actually a really, really big committee. And Patty Kelly told me before I got on this committee, she'd been on it before, and she said, it's all these people in the coldest room in the entire city, and you know, no breaks. It went on for 2.5 hours, and I finally reached the point where I said, they don't give us a break. In 5 minutes, I am walking out and standing in the sunshine because San Diego had Chamber of Commerce weather. So these are the highlights from professional standards. One, until COVID hit, they were absolutely, totally opposed to having video, Zoom, whatever meetings for arbitration and ethics hearings. And you had to be in a room by yourself if you were a witness in another state, and you had to have somebody monitor you that you were alone. It was just a big mess. Well, now, thanks to COVID, they're amending the Code of Ethics and Arbitration Manual to provide guidance to have virtual meetings for these hearings. And it'll be up to the head of the panel whether they want it virtual or you have to be there. So here was a change in Standard of Practice Code of Ethics 12-1 to clearly prohibit members from describing their services as free. Now this is a really big deal because MLS also passed something with this, but so did professional standards. You cannot advertise that your services are free. You can't say, I'll do free staging of your house if you're going to get paid by the seller for selling it. And you cannot advertise to buyers, hey, my services are free. No, you're getting paid. You may not be getting paid by the buyer, but you are getting paid. So not only did they change this, but this was, you all know we're in a lawsuit with the Department of Justice, but this was a request from, not a request, a request.
NAR is a lawsuit.
Yeah, lawsuit, not us personally, NAR is. And so this was a request that you may not ever advertise your services for free unless you are absolutely getting no compensation from anybody, anywhere, anyway.
Can we expand on that for a second? Because I hear all the time agents say, I can represent you at the builder because it's free, right? The builder's paying my commission, you know, you don't have to pay it. So you can't say things like that anymore. You shouldn't say them anyway because it's not free, it's tacked onto the price of the home at the end of the day. The other conversation is, you know, don't worry about it, the buyer, I get all my commission from the co-op, I work for whatever it is. That's not free, you're still receiving money. And so you gotta make sure that you have a buyer presentation or something to say to a buyer to explain the fact that you are being compensated. And it gets way worse. Here in just a few, we're gonna be talking about a change in MLS that will actually publish your commission. So we'll get there when we get there.
So another change was Standard of Practice 1-18 to codify the ethical obligations of the buyer's agent. So here's what happens. The buyer sends an offer to the seller, and he doesn't hear back, seller's agent, doesn't hear back from the seller's agent, doesn't hear back. Finally calls up and says, I want proof, written proof that you have presented my offer to the seller. Well, that passed last year. But evidently there has been a big hoo-ha about the fact that there's no obligation for the buyer's agent to respond back to the seller's agent saying, I've presented your counter to my buyer. So if a seller's agent calls you up and said, how do I even know you presented my counter to your seller? You must provide written proof. So that is another change. Another big change is Article 10-11 to not allow displays of negative symbols on a brokerage website or an MLS. Now this, believe it or not, was the longest discussion. So what happened was an agent was going through photos of homes on MLS, and there was a Confederate flag hanging in the garage of this listing, and the photo was on actually the broker's website. And she took offense. So this has been changed to, you may not display negative symbols, and the broker is responsible for what is displayed on the website, because the broker owns all of the listings. But it was changed to say, nothing may be displayed that indicates a racial preference or illegal discrimination based on a protected class. So, watch the photos, and this would also include religious symbols. Watch the photos that you put either on the website, your website, on the MLS, whatever. And then another big discussion, which I gotta be honest, I really didn't get this one, but evidently it's a big thing. They want to replace the term handicap with the word disability or disabled. And those are my big takeaways from professional standards that lasted 2.5 hours in a freezing cold room.
So these changes are pretty major, right? The things that are happening in a committee meeting. There's 80 people on your committee, I think, at least 80.
At least.
One of the ones that show up, so there's probably 65 that are there. And these are major things that are affecting the way that our industry works, and they happen at this meeting, and then they're moved forward, and then they kind of, make it their way out here. So these are major meetings of why we go and why we participate. Tom, what was your meeting and your big takeaways?
Well, I'm on the major investor council for the political PACs for NAR. And we always worry about advocacy and what the heck we're all doing, right? Where does my $50 go that they're, as a matter of fact, annual dues are due? There's gonna be a little $50 charge on there. Just frickin' pay it. If you've got a paycheck over the last 2 years, just pay the $50. Because here are some of the things that may have changed had we not had the political power, which means money, right? Money means political power, okay? Completely together. The national level is the 1031. They were trying to change the 1031 to get rid of it or increase, something or other in the taxes and everything else. That was defeated and changed. They were to increase capital gains. This was all in the Build Back Better bill that they just passed, before it got passed. They would increase capital gains, increase the step up in basis upon death, removed taxation on unrealized capital gains. Yeah, they were going to tax you on your 1041 on unrealized gains. So if you made $1 on paper, you owed them 20, 30 cents for that dollar that you haven't even seen yet, right? That's what they were trying to do. Reducing the limits on the 20% deduction on qualified business income. State level is protection of agent from seller, filling out the SRPD, and I'm going to get to the SRPD in just a little bit. Appropriation of the real estate division's technology upgrades. Change wording to eliminate the extension of the no-cause eviction from 30-day to as long as 90 days. They were going to move the 30-day eviction process to be a 90-day eviction process, right? And that we bantered that back and beat that back.
That was a state level item.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, yeah, I'm on state level now.
I'm just making sure everyone knows. Go ahead, continue.
Thank you. Now you let me lose my place. They were trying to get rid of the summary eviction. Now, the summary eviction, if you all know, is the easy way to get people out that aren't paying their rent, right? So I expect to see that come back again in the next legislative session, so that's not going to go away. The prevention of discrimination of housing based on source of income, landlord. They wanted to have a landlord registry for the state so they would know who landlords are and who aren't. It's not like they don't already know, because you're probably paying a higher tax than your property tax if you're having an investment property. The rental assistance program, we got through. We defeated a bill that would made it illegal for landlords to inquire about a past criminal conviction. They didn't want you to know who the frick you were gonna rent to, right? You weren't gonna be able to do a background check and see if they had been convicted for a felon, so all those child molesters, everything else can move into your properties. Defeated provision to increase the government service tax, which is the vehicle registration fee that was on there, a provision that would have imposed linkage fees on new developments, which would have increased home prices, and defeated a proposal that would have eliminated the use of natural gas in new developments. They didn't want you to be able to cook with gas. So all you cooks who can't cook on electric range, I can't either,
I can't.
would have not been able to use a gas stove because there had been no gas hookups to the damn houses, would have been all electric. Now, that was to help decrease the carbon footprints of our houses, but Lord all knows that we get the electrical power from burning coal to turn the turbines to make the damn electricity. So that's some of the stupid stuff that we were able to beat back.
So pay the $50.
Wow.
So pay the $50, right? I mean, come on. And it's not,
Here's what's funny about that. I found out that more people will be late and pay the $50 late fee than paying on time and paying the $50, so pay the $50. I was on participation council, and so there's four political committees that you can be part of. Participation council is getting participants to take part in the PACs and that. And so here's what's kind of cool in Nevada. Our goal was 37% participation. So in Nevada, we have about 18,000 Realtor members throughout the entire state. The majority of those members sit in Las Vegas Realtors here. But out of that, the entire goal for our state was 37% of our people actually participating by giving their $50 or more, becoming major investors. Right now, Nevada sits at 46%. And so that was as of the meeting that we went to in the beginning of November. I think that we just hit the 50th percent mark, which is really kind of cool. But think how sad that is. In an industry where people are making a very good income and where they're actually being saved by all of these things that we're doing, we can't get them to give $50. And that's how that, and the lowest minimum that you can give, we call it our fair share of the $50, 15. We've been fighting with people to give $15. And we can't, I know what you're thinking, just bill them for it. We can't do that. Like even the stuff that you're billed for at LBR, you can remove the $50, but we can't just say, hey, pay this fair share. We have to beg you to do it. So kind of discouraging.
I paid my dues last week.
Yep.
I gotta tell you.
Thank you, Ellie, for paying early. There's no benefit to that, but we appreciate it.
It was not easy to pay that stupid $50.
You have to go through a couple of steps, right?
We gotta make it easier.
Yeah.
I mean,
You should run for the board.
I had it, I will. I guess I'm the
So the funny part is, the reason why it's so hard is because we had to put steps in place because it was too easy to remove. And there's a thing called above the line and below the line billing. And it used to be the dues, the $50 was an above the line thing.
just baked in.
It was there and people just paid it. And we actually got in a little bit of trouble for that. And so we had to put it below the line. And the one thing we didn't want is we didn't want you to just click an X and be able to remove it really easy. We wanted you to have to go through a series of videos and questions to say, do you really even understand what this is for? Because most people responded by saying, I don't really understand what that's for. And so now we created those. Well, then people said, well, what if I wanted to give more? We're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot because there were people that would give 1,000 that they really understood. Not a lot of them, right? But there were people that would do it. And so we kind of augmented that process, which made it completely complicated, which made it the problem it is today. But at least there's a video from Brandon. Okay, so that's our goal. How many people do you think invest in our major investors in our PACs?
which is $1,000 or more.
$1,000 more. How many do you think?
10%, 5%?
71,000 are major investors. Did you know that?
Across the United States?
Across the United States.
Across the United States.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, at 1.5 million.
1.5 million, 71,000.
Well, here is 100, I think it's 182 right now. So
17,000.
we're going to do some things next year to fix that, to get you guys more involved in that side of it, but we'll definitely talk about it. Okay, going back through, Janet has a number of takeaways because she has notes. We're going to talk about the whole reason that the majority of us were there, which was the national board meeting. And it is board for a reason, right? So if you've never been to this, anyone ever caucus with their party? Like go through an actual caucus and be part of it and help vote for a candidate or go through that process? Anybody? Okay, that's fun, right?
So much fun.
So this is what this room looks like. There are almost 980 national directors. That includes subcategories of different organizations like CCIM or WCR or all of these different groups. Every state and territory that we represent, California has 180,000 realtor members. So they have like 70 directors that sit on the board of directors, right? So out of this entire group, they have 70. Florida has 168,000 members, so they have like 68. So really, if you upset California or Florida on anything, they can sway the votes on things that happen. And when they get together on something, they can really make something change. And so that's why you'll notice a lot of our national presidents are from where? California and Florida. Right behind them is Texas. Texas has 100,000 members, I think, or something like that, because they have like more little boards than anybody, because Texas is so far apart from other areas. So imagine from Nevada, we have in Southern Nevada, from Las Vegas Realtors, we have 7 national directors, and at Signature, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 of the 7. And then at the state, we have another 3, and then from Reno, I believe they have 2, and then there's 1 at-large member. So we really only, as a state, have like 10 national directors. So it's kind of hard for Nevada to jump in and change something, but it's not impossible. Because we send all of these people and they get to know people, and Janet likes to network, we've been able to actually sway opinion on things by just doing that. So think about it. Tom, so at the national meeting, what was the big debate?
I don't know, ask Janet, she took notes.
You're so helpful.
Board of directors.
At the board of directors meeting, the biggest item of debate was the structural shift at the association. Did anyone remember getting this from NAR? So do you really care? I'm just going to ask, show of hands, who here cares how the management of National Association of Realtors is set up? Okay, I appreciate you 3 people, you should get involved. The whole thing is, there's been a big debate about the size of the board, and can 980 people be effective in change? And the biggest thing we hear about National Association of Realtors is you never change. You never do anything for me, you're never forward thinking, right? So we had a massive debate on how the board would be set up. And so a couple of things that they did. Number 1, they expanded the size of the executive committee. Executive committee went from, I think, about 15 people to about 60 people. And so the idea is that every state would have an RVP. RVP is a regional vice president. It's someone who's over a majority of states. We have 6 in our region. They would have that RVP and the RVP from the year before sit on the executive committee, and it'd be like a mini Senate, right? They would be able to kind of have more debate and conversation, and they meet one more time a year. And out of that one more time a year, they would hopefully cause more change to happen. It required that the RVP have qualifications. We had qualifications for an RVP, but they'd have to go through a background check and all these other stuff. The last thing that came out of it is that they're going to reimburse the expenses of having this extra group. I mean, that was the biggest item of debate, and it took how long? 2 hours?
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours, and that's change, right? Let's talk about the MLS changes. Janet?
Yeah.
This one will really affect you. Okay, so the first one was policy statement 8.6, one data source would require that MLS participants get a single data feed in accordance with the participant's licensed authorized user. So what does that mean for you guys? It means that some associations actually don't provide a data feed out to their members. We here at Las Vegas Realtors already do that, so we're already in the clear for it. Back office fee. It would require that brokerages are receiving an MLS-provided back office feed to be able to provide that feed to brokers like Brandon, so that he can then take the MLS data and provide it on a website that goes out to your clients, or out to you. Can you imagine there are companies out there that don't actually get that or do that, or MLSs that do it? Doesn't that sound so archaic, right? Brandon knows this one, I didn't really understand it. Require that participants' IDX displays must identify the listing firm and email and phone number provided by the listing participant in a reasonable prominent location and readily visible color and typeface, not similar than the median used in display of the listing data. So pretty much anywhere you go right now and you see a listing advertised, next to it you see what? Hopefully, the information for the company that has the listing, right?
Well, it used to be that you just had to have it displayed on the page. It could be at the very bottom, this listing provided courtesy of Signature Real Estate Group. Now they're saying it needs to be prominent, you need to be able to find it quickly, they need to be able to see it, not search for it, and then they're given the option for the broker to decide what information is displayed there. Is there an email that comes to the brokerage? Is it the listing agent's email is it, what phone number is it, that type of stuff. So they're giving some control to the brokers to decide what displays on that, and then they're making sure that all the participants that do IDX, which understand IDX is only other brokerages. This is not your public sites like Realtor.com or your consumer sites, Trulia, those kinds of things. They don't have to subscribe by this, right? So all we did was hinder us a little bit to try to give a little bit more recognition or the ability for the listing agent to turn that lead.
The only thing I heard on that carve-out was that some of those groups have become brokerages, and so it could try to...
But they could try to go back the other way too. But here's an effect. I was against this for a reason, because the smaller brokerages, I believe, are going to be at a disadvantage. Because the only reason it makes sense for us to put the other brokerages' listings on our website is what? To generate business and leads for our website, for our agents. And we do that, and we allow them to use ours for the same purpose. But now what we're saying is, I'm going to let you put my listing on your website, but I want to make sure I get the calls on your website. I'm going to pay you nothing, but I want to make sure they're calling me. So what happens is this: who could pull away the easiest would be a large brokerage with lots of listings. Now they don't need your listings anymore. They'll just push theirs out. You see what I mean? And you won't be able to, the smaller brokerages, I think, get hurt in this a little bit. I think the concept behind it's good, but I think there's going to be some ramifications that'll need to be adjusted.
Janet?
So since I'm on the MLS committee, I was at the MLS forum, and this was a big discussion item in the MLS forum. Now, those people who were for it said it promotes transparency. But those who were against it said it basically promotes dual agency, and that was their opposition.
So this next one was probably the biggest change that came out of the entire conference, and it's just more of the change of the way that we do business, and something that I want to make sure that you're thinking of. It requires MLSs to include the listing broker's offer of compensation for each active listing displayed on the consumer-facing website and on MLS data feeds provided to participants and subscribers, and also requires the MLS to permit participants and subscribers at their discretion to share offers of compensation through IDX and VOW displays and everything else. So what this means is that every single place that you take a listing, the co-op for that listing will also be marketed.
That's not quite. It means that the board's website will, and the brokers have the option to display it.
Correct, but everyone's going to see it, right? Because when it goes out to those groups, they're going to know exactly what your compensation level is as a buyer's agent.
They're going to be able to find it for sure.
So a couple of things go into this. Number one, there's an item that was also changed that used to be able years ago. I can't right now in mine, and I couldn't before. Some people have said they can. You could search by compensation. So if you had a client that had a buyer-broker agreement that said they're going to pay you 3% as your commission, and you're receiving that in your agreement, you could then go into the MLS. I've never done this. I don't know the value behind it, but you could go in and set up their search where they only receive listings that are co-opting that percent, right? I mean, you could see how that could be some issues, but there was the availability for you to do it. Now, I can understand having a conversation with my client and say, do you want me to show you all the listings out there, or only the ones that co-op based on our agreement? And they said only these ones, and I got it in writing with a blood sample, then I could see doing that. But now what it's going to mean is that if I'm a consumer and you charge me X%, and you said that's what you always charge, and I go and look at all of your compensation from all of the listings that you have, I could actually see all of those public-facing compensations. So what does it mean for us? It means that you need to develop a much better standard of practice that is fair housing considerate. Because if you treat one person different than you treat another person, is that a violation of fair housing? Absolutely. But if you were using a buyer-broker agreement the entire time, and you had a buyer presentation the entire time, and you're able to have a commission conversation with every client, will this ever affect you? No. And I think that's the biggest thing that I heard a lot of brokers that were out there that were upset about it. They are literally completely unprepared to have any type of buyer conversation around commission. And I think that's why we're ahead of the game as a company.
Yeah, and I don't think this is bad at all. I really think the disclosure of that is good. It does two things. Number one, if you have a conversation with your seller and you agree to offer X percentage across the board, then they can see that you're doing that. So I think it's good.
So while we're on this topic, why don't you talk about the change of the listing agreement?
So who's looked at the new listing agreement? Been out for a few weeks,
Well, you guys have been busy.
right? All right, well, the important thing is you need to switch and start using the new listing agreement, okay? Because in transaction desk, if you've got open agreements in the past, or you've got templates set up, you need to switch. There's a new listing agreement. And in there, Section 2, terms of sale, and the compensation, and Section 5, compensation. Compensation changed where it used to say you were taking the listing at X percentage, right? And then it said you were offering X percentage to the buyer's agent, or compensation, right? The X percentage to the buyer's agent is now gone. So now you take a listing at X percentage. That doesn't mean you don't offer some across the board, but what it was doing is it changes the conversation from saying, well, I only charge you X, what do you want to pay the buyer? Right, or the buyer's agent? Who pays the buyer's agent's commission? No, the seller does not. No, the buyer doesn't. The listing broker. The commission is paid to the listing broker, and the listing broker actually pays the buyer's compensation. We offer that across the multiple listing service. We're obligated as a company to pay that percentage to the listing broker. See, we're getting into issues in the NAR and the lawsuit and all that stuff, because they're saying, well, we're not giving the opportunity for the seller to negotiate the buyer's compensation, or the buyer's agent's compensation. Well, that isn't a negotiating term between the seller and them. That's a negotiating term between the listing broker and the buyer broker. Does that make sense? And so this is very clear that we're going to take X, and now you decide how you spend that commission on marketing. Does that make sense? So if I take it at 6 bananas, and I decide to do 1, 2, 3, or whatever, that gives me the choice to put that there and adjust that as necessary. Now, some people say, well, that's not fair because the seller doesn't have a say. You're still going to have those conversations with the seller. Now, the difference is also that the seller gets to see what? The compensation on the open public forum. So I think this is good for transparency. I think this is good for agents and everything else across the board. And it stops you from giving like the free thing. It stops you from saying, well, we only charge you this. No, you don't. You charge an entire commission and you pay that out. So that's a big change in the listing agreement. Just understand that now you're not putting what your percentage is, you're putting the whole, right? And then you divide that up.
So there are some states right now, I believe New Jersey is one of them, where they never had any type of co-op set. See, a lot of people misunderstand the cooperation part of being part of the board. We have a cooperation agreement with all brokers. It was never about co-op of commission, it was about co-op of information, right? And so a lot of people just think that way, that you've got to give me something. We don't have to give you anything. That commission, as Brandon said, always belonged to that listing agent, and that's why I think the whole onus is, when does the listing agent's job start? Anybody. When did your job start as a listing agent? When you started prospecting, right? When you had that horrible phone call with that person who slammed the phone down on you 2 years ago and you kept following up, that was the beginning of your job, and you did all of that work to that point. The beginning of the closing was when you got an offer from the buyer's agent. So I could argue with you a lot that there isn't a clear defining thing that should ever be split, right? Because I could go through the whole process, and if you were a good buyer's agent that used a buyer-broker agreement, when did your job start as a buyer's agent? When you started prospecting for the buyer. So the whole thing is, we have messed up our own industry where we put these limitations on our minds that say, well, our job only started when 2 parties came to a contract. That isn't true. If you really look at your entire service and when you started to go through it, you may want to reevaluate your value and what you charge. But at the end of the day, the one thing you can't do, and this is what we're probably going to look at as a company, you can't get a couple of phone calls and go in and just manipulate commission because you know an offer's coming. There are still rules that are regulated by the MLS that can track every time you go in and change something. And so before you make a commission change, you must publish it to all members. What does that mean? I got to go in and get a change order to my client. Well, I don't have to in this case anymore. I can go in and change it, but I got to publish that out to all members that are going to see it. And if they showed my listing with this listing sheet and wrote the offer and sent it to me, and I changed it when I got the offer, I'm going to be in some type of arbitration. You're not going to enjoy it. So think about that.
And I could see a form now that you won't need the seller's authorization to change that. So that people are going to, people are worried about the manipulation or changing of the day of day trading, the commissioners. Don't do that. Don't make this worse, the situation, because we're trying to make it better. But I can foresee that there will be a change order form that you'll need to have the broker sign to adjust that commission. So watch for that stuff too. But overall, I think this is a good thing to put us down the right track. And it is the listing broker's commission, and we decide how we spend it, you know, obviously with you guys. We don't personally, but that's how it's done. So use that listing agreement, it'll protect you and it'll put you in a better position.
So we've got some other changes locally, but before we do that, Janet, any other quick items, because we got about 5 minutes, any other quick items?
Sure.
Janet took copious notes.
I always do. These guys just sit there. But anyway, some other things that came out of the MLS Tech Forum were, where do leads come from? 52% of agents' leads come from social media, believe it or not, and 31% come from their CRM. Another little interesting fact was, how much are agents spending to get leads? 29% spend less than $50 a month. So social media is free, your CRM is basically free. Another thing that I went to that I enjoy every year is NAR has their own economist, Dr. Lawrence Yun, and he talked about residential economic trends, and the question was, is the economy back to normal? And he said, no, we're 4 million jobs short prior to the pandemic. But here's the thing, you're not going to be counted as unemployed unless you're not actively looking for a job. And what has happened is people in their late 50s and early 60s decided, yeah, no, I'm taking early retirement, and they're gone.
I missed that boat.
So they're not even being counted in this number. And he did mention Nevada specifically, and he said job growth is down significantly in Nevada. And if you've been to any drive-through lately, you've seen the sign before you place your order, they're begging you to come work for them. And he said existing home sales throughout COVID thrived, really due to low interest rates and the number of office workers who were able or forced to work from home and went, oh no, I can't do this in my 2-bedroom apartment with these 2 kids running around. So that is really what drove a lot of these home sales. New construction's back. In fact, home sales in 2021, 12, were the best they've been since 2006. New construction's back in 2021. Your typical home sold in 1 week, but very, very few closed on time. And one of the main reasons for that is the shortage of appraisers. And believe it or not, he said there's a workage shortage everywhere except at NAR, where everybody wants to be a realtor. So investors in 2021 were only 16% of the market. In 2021, 95% of clients started their search on the internet. So you need an internet game plan. The typical first-time buyer is 33 years old. One of his big concerns was price to income ratio. And I only see that getting probably worse in Las Vegas. He predicts inventory will shoot higher in spring of '22. Foreclosures are at an all-time low, mainly due to government intervention.
Wait. I heard there was going to be this major foreclosure crisis, and we all should get back on those lists so that we're getting assets.
Didn't hear that here from me.
I got that listed in Dyer, Nevada. That was great.
We are at an all-time low. And his other big concern was consumer inflation. How much more time do I have? Because I want to cover some of these.
20 seconds,
Take as
literally.
long as you want. You're going to anyway.
Okay, this gal I've never seen before, very dynamic speaker from California, who talked about code of ethics and risk management. The one thing that differentiates you from other real estate professionals is the code of ethics, which is ethics, choice, honor, value, integrity. I got that tap twice. Morals, principles, honesty, fair, and right. Article 1, be honest with all parties. Do you know that according to Article 1, if you're in a listing appointment and you are deliberately misleading the seller as to what he can probably get for his home, that you have violated Article 1 of the Code of Ethics?
You lied.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we can give you $500,000 for this $200,000 house.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I've never really heard anybody put that in words. It's not like, okay, I'm gonna take this overpriced listing and then I'm gonna lower the price till it sells. No, you have violated the Code of Ethics. The number one issue in risk management is miscommunication.
No.
Pick up the phone and call whoever you're having an issue with and work it out before you find yourself in a hearing. We've all talked about this before. Everything needs to be in writing. And guess what the number one lawsuit from buyers is?
What?
Commission.
Tell us, old wise one.
The fact that their agent did not explain the contract to them. They had no idea what they were signing. It was just emailed to them and sign here, sign here, sign here. They had no clue. That is the number one lawsuit from buyers. You need to be sitting down with your buyers and going over that contract. And if they say, oh yeah, we'd like to close January 4th, then we can put 5% down. No, you don't take it from there. You need to explain the whole thing after it is filled out. She also talked about be very careful of virtual staging and be careful using too many adjectives. This comes under Article 12, present an
Adjective.
You're pretty ugly.
Okay. Hold on, is it pretty or ugly?
In this case, I think pretty would be an adverb, because adverbs modify adjectives. So anyway, going on.
That's 20 seconds. Pick your last favorite thing.
Okay.
It's like Oprah, on all your favorite things.
B, Article 16, interference with exclusive representation agreements. Be careful about casually giving advice. You're talking to an acquaintance who said, my house is listed, I hate my agent, they didn't price it right, they don't communicate with me, I never hear from them. Do not casually give them advice, telling them how they can cancel their contract. You are interfering with the agency relationship that other agent has with their clients. In arbitration, the number one thing is the fact that the buyer did not tell the truth. If the buyer states, oh, no, I didn't sign a buyer brokerage agreement, no, we haven't signed anything, change your verbiage to, have you seen this property with anyone else before? Am I through?
Yeah, that was great. That was fantastic.
I have
Yes, Janet is going to give out her copious notes. She's actually said that she would. It'll be in the newsletter?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I have to type all this again?
No, you already typed it.
Cut and paste.
So,
All right, I have to correct my typos. One more quick thing. I'm giving away these little yellow books at the end. If your card's in there, I'm going to be drawing.
No one wants.
they were good. I actually got Broker of the Year while I was there. It's a pin, and I bought it for $10.95 at the store. Put it, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, so one last thing that we have to announce, and that is the fact that they have also rolled out a new SRPD. And so during the legislative session, they changed the SRPD so you can make sure that you're using the updated forms in your transaction folders. The new updated SRPD actually has a clause in it that has become law that says the listing agent cannot complete the document for the client. Right? So you have a law that protects you, and when your client says, will you help me fill this out? What do you say?
No!
No, it's against the law. Breaking the law. Okay, cool.
Two other
Brandon.
things on the SRPD, but I
Okay, so
That whole thing.
there was 9 other forms that were just released, right? Everyone got an email from LVR that explained it with little links to videos that explain the changes. If you're like me, it's probably missed it, but I'm going to post a link to this article with the links to the videos in the agent's signature Facebook page so that you guys can can do some research on, just inform yourself on these forms.
And it was in the newsletter.
Yes, it was. If you want any of these documents that I have, because you're like me and you enjoy reading this stuff, all of these are actually linked on Las Vegas Realtor. If you log in with your MLS ID and your password, they have a whole archive of documents about that. If you're not getting these updates, definitely do this. Go to realtor.org and sign up for their news updates, and they will actually send you, cutting news that comes out affecting realtors and real estate. But it's great content for clients, the actual articles that matter to them. Yeah, anything else that we missed about the great San Diego trip? We saw Keith Urban.
Oh.
That was cool. That was unintentional, by the way. That had nothing to do with our plans.
Oh, and I've always liked Drew Brees. He was one of the keynote speakers. What a wonderful, nice man. I mean, just the nicest man. And then we also had Simone Biles as a keynote speaker, and she was
We still have twitches.
she was adorable.
So every year at NAR, they bring in a national speaker, someone major, to kind of inspire the mass, right, to share something with it. My actual favorite speaker ever, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, was Bill Clinton and George Bush together. George Bush Sr., not Jr. It was the best public speech I've ever heard from two people on opposite sides of the aisle. They were amazing together. Yeah, cool. Anything else, Brandon? Tyson, we really appreciate you being here. Tyson really enjoyed his first trip. He did a great job. Everyone loved him. And Janet, thank you for the notes. Tom,
Can I say one
thank you
more
for being
thing?
there.
We're having a holiday party on Friday the 10th at 10 o'clock. It's a breakfast brunch potluck at the Spanish Ridge office, and bring a white elephant gift value around $25, no name on it, wrap to exchange. But please RSVP to Haley at signaturenv.com.
I have to mention it that we,
Or on the app.
yeah, our international group, our global committee, again, won the Diamond Award. Diamond, right? Yeah. And the state association won gold. You can't always win everything as a state, but that's pretty incredible. That's out of probably, there's got to be 600 of them across the nation, and to get diamond as many times as we have is awesome. So congratulations to them. With that, guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your questions and involvement. We appreciate you. Have a great week. Sell something expensive. It helps.
Are you gonna put some cards yet?